Welcome back to GTD. I'm Micah Farmer, joined by Keegan Miller, and it's time for some F1 talk. And this past weekend was Monaco, and there was a new mandatory two-stop strategy that was supposed to bring chaos, and instead it brought some of the most disgusting activities on a racetrack I have ever seen. Shout out Racing Bulls and Williams for ruining not just mine, but everyone's day, especially George Russell. And what a race this was. I wish he could pass. I feel like Leclerc would have had a chance for the win if he could have, but the win ended up going to Lando Norris, who I think was the quickest driver all day long. Definitely deserved it. Won from pole. This was the weekend of Lando Norris once we got out of practice where Leclerc was running the show. But McLaren, I think, definitely is going to be happy with this. You've wanted Lando Norris to kind of step up in recent weeks, and I feel like this
Yep.
is his best performance since Melbourne when he won that race. I was super impressed with Norris this weekend, and everyone knows I'm fairly critical of Lando when he does not perform as he should, being the team leader of the best team or the best car in Formula One right now. So
Yep.
credit to Lando Norris, absolutely performed this weekend. My boy Leclerc on the podium, as I predicted. Let's go. Oscar Piastri finishes out your podium in third. But Keegan, what'd you see this weekend in Monaco other than just some cars glued to the back of each other?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I saw. It was very boring. I think I don't know if you said it yet on this episode, but you've used the word train whenever we've talked about this race off camera, like every single time we mentioned it, and that's exactly what it was. I agree with you. I think if this track kind of alluded for more passing or whatever, I think you would see a better battle between Leclerc and Norris, especially with how close Leclerc was able to get to him. And how fast he was in practice and all weekend, and how he has the experience here and the win here. So I think we would have seen a better battle. I don't know who would have won that, but we didn't because we're not going to ever again. So I applaud Max Verstappen for doing something mildly interesting with this strategy and
Yeah, just sitting in the front, backing everyone up.
Yeah, so I mean that was kind of slightly entertaining, but other than that, the racing was not racing; it was more driving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think we need to talk about Mercedes because what on earth was that? I know they were stuck behind first the V carbs and then the Williams cars, but at least do something. They just kind of
Yeah,
sat there for 60 laps, like, hmm, hmm, and just didn't do anything. And then
yeah.
George Russell was finally like, whatever, and just cut the chicane and went by. I think it was Sainz or Albon. I can't remember which Williams it
It was
was at that point in
it
the
was
race.
it was Albon.
It was
It was
Albon,
Albon.
yeah. And it went by Albon, and the stewards are like, "That's gonna be a penalty." He was like, "I don't
Yeah.
care," and they're like, "It's a
We're
drive-through
good.
penalty now,"
Yep.
and he went, "I don't care. I just want to go home." That
Yeah.
I I feel bad for Russell. That's got to be one of the most frustrating races he'll ever do. I don't know what the plan for Mercedes was, especially knowing you have two mandatory pit stops. Why would you just sit there for 60 of the 78 laps? I I don't get what they were trying to do.
Yeah, we saw a lot of teams. We saw what they really had in between their years. A lot of teams did a lot of different things and a lot of out of the box things, which honestly I applaud. Did they work out for most of them? No, but hey, they're trying something at this track because they know
Yeah.
after qualifying you're gridlocked. So I don't hate it. Did it work out for them? No, they know that. All right, let's move on. I don't think they care at this point. They were just like, whatever. Yeah, we didn't qualify well, so let's just try some things we've had on the board for the last 3 years that no one's ever talked about.
Yeah. Strategy of the day though goes to Racing Bulls for being the first team to
Oh yeah,
figure out, oh, we can just back up the entire pack. And they deployed the tactical roadblock known as Liam Lawson to let Isaac Hadjar take both of his pit stops. And then Lawson was able to remain in eighth, come home sixth and eighth for Racing Bulls this weekend.
yeah,
I think great performance from Esteban Ocon. Never saw him on the broadcast once. They never talked about him at all, but he just existed in seventh and finished there. Great day for him. And let's see, down the list here. Lance Stroll, horror show for him. Had a bad time. Fernando Alonso, awful luck for him. Running, I believe, sixth. And Adrian Newey hit the
yeah,
Newt engine for more wind tunnel time button and cost him the points. Rough break for
yeah,
Alonso there.
yeah. And you don't know how many more Monaco Grand Prix he's gonna have left in him. It's you kind of get the feeling that okay, that might have been it. So every race that he wrecks out of in the next for the rest of the season, honestly, it's kind of just tough for him because okay, he may never drive this track again, especially for Aston Martin or whatever. So tough break for him. But I think. Do we have everything else to cover for Monaco, or can we move on to an actual racetrack?
We have our predictions to cover. I am still barely holding on to the lead. I'm now at 8 points. Keegan's at 7. I went for Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, and Lando Norris in that order. I got Leclerc right, so 1 point for me. And then, Keegan, I know you went for Lando for the win. What were your other two? Was it Max and Hamilton?
Yes, I did have a Ferrari on the pole. I just because I knew they were going to bring equipment to try to get Leclerc that position, and I just thought all Hamilton has to do is out qualify him, which he's very capable of. Well, he hasn't this year, but he's got the driving ability too, and he will. He did in
the China Sprint, and that was it.
Yeah. So I just figured, maybe Ferrari gives him some equipment that he can actually drive. He'll take off. That didn't happen, but I got the winner, and that was my 2 points. That's why I'm sitting at 7, just 1 behind you. And speaking of predictions, let's just get into Spain.
Yeah,
that's a fun racetrack.
It's not, but I appreciate the optimism. They removed the
more fun.
They removed the last chicane, so now instead of that clumsy chicane, you have just still a high-speed corner where you can't follow leading onto the DRS zone, which what could go wrong with that? But let's go into our predictions for this week. I'm taking Oscar Piastri back to the top step of the podium. I think he wins this weekend in Spain. Lando Norris comes home second. I think the McLaren is going to be great here. Usually Spain is a track of whoever has the best car that year absolutely goes out and dominates Spain. It's typical cookie-cutter F1 track. And then Max Verstappen this year has alternated between no podium and on the podium every race. And he was not on the podium last week, so he has to be this week. So Max Verstappen comes home third. That's the logic.
I don't hate that. I agree with the McLaren logic, 100% without a doubt. And that's why I chose Lando Norris to win, because you mentioned it earlier, just the way he looked at Monaco. And you've said in the past that when he's, and just people know this, when he is on form, he's very hard to beat. Now, can he very easily be knocked off his form? Yes, we've seen that happen. But I don't think it's going to happen in one race. I think he's going to be there for 3 to 4 races at the Lando Norris we've come to know he can be. I think that's where he is now. So I got him going back to back, especially with that McLaren at this track. And then I also have Max Verstappen on the podium. I have him second. Driving ability. Nothing needs to be said about that. Then I have George Russell in my third spot. I think Mercedes is going to really try to bounce back and bring a car like they had in Australia earlier this year and China. So I think, George Russell can really lock down another top 3 this year.
Well, no Piastri on the podium from you. Interesting. We'll see what happens there.
I think if he gets on podium, he wins.
All right. So Keegan thinks Piastri slams into the wall on lap 2 is what I'm hearing.
I don't know. I don't know. I just I think George Russell is going to be more angry, if that makes sense. Not angry, just more hungry.
Angry George Russell. All right, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I think another driver you need to see something from this weekend is Franco Colapinto. He's been shoved into the Alpine and has been, let's face it, bad. Has not been fast at Imola, had the big crash, really struggled at Monaco, and he needs to show something in Spain because he's only in the car for 5 races. Remember, they announced this as a 5-race kind of trial period. I don't know if this is like their Franco Colapinto free trial or what's happening right now, but I need to see something from him at this point before, especially the way you kicked out Jack Doohan. I know maybe it wasn't the best guy to put in the seat in the first place, but still, you don't kick him out like that for a guy who runs 20th every week. So I need Colapinto to show me just literally anything, but that's pretty much it for F1 this weekend as we get ready to go to Spain. But for now, that's Keegan. I'm Micah. Check out all the NASCAR stuff on the channel as well this week, and there will be baseball content if you're interested in that. But until then, we will see you next week.